"Stop, listen to her, or you'll kill me." Victor Kane rasped cut through the chaos, silencing 20 doctors as every eye turned toward the black cleaner clutching her mop, the only one who had seen what they all missed. 20 of the world's best doctors stood helpless as the billionaire's life slipped away. But in the corner, a quiet cleaner spotted what every expert had missed. Would you have seen it, or would you have walked past the one clue that could save a life? But that moment was still far ahead. To understand how it came to this, how a man who commanded empires with the flick of a pen ended up whispering for his life, we must begin where power was still an illusion of safety. Before we jump in, I want to know, where in the world are you watching from? And what kind of story do you crave next? Drop your answer in the comments below. If stories like this grip your heart and refuse to let go, well, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I've got another powerful story coming your way tomorrow, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. Now, let's get into today's story. Victor Kane was a man the world never said no to. Billionaire CEO of Kane Global Industries, his name appeared daily in financial journals, on television screens, and whispered with awe in boardrooms. His suits were tailored in Milan, his watches crafted in Geneva, and his private jet bore his initials in gold leaf. The boardroom that morning was a theater of reverence. Executives leaned forward, pens ready, as Victor spoke in his measured, commanding tone. A merger worth billions, a decision that could alter markets across continents, hinged on his words. His gray hair gleamed under recessed lighting, his posture as straight as the skyscraper they sat in. But under the mahogany table, unseen by cameras or board members, his hand trembled. He clenched it into a fist, hiding the tremor. His throat tightened. The sharp burn in his chest came again, brief but merciless, forcing him to pause mid-sentence. "Sir, are you all right?" His assistant whispered. Victor forced a thin smile. "Perfectly fine. Continue." Because men like him weren't allowed weakness. By noon, reporters outside the skyscraper snapped photos as Victor descended the marble steps. He raised his hand in practiced confidence, but his body betrayed him. The world spun, colors blurring, and suddenly the marble was cold against his cheek. Gasps filled the air. "Call an ambulance." Voices cried. Cameras flashed. For the first time, Victor Kane was not the untouchable titan. He was a man sprawled helpless on the ground, his lips pale, his breathing shallow. When he awoke, it was to blinding white lights, sterile air, and the low hum of machines. The Kane Global Medical Pavilion, a private hospital he himself had donated billions to, was now his prison. 20 of the nation's top doctors surrounded him, summoned as if to a royal court. Cardiologists, neurologists, pulmonologists, specialists flown in overnight, each one a master of their field. They spoke in medical jargon, traded notes on tablets, and adjusted machines that beeped in rhythm with his fragile heartbeat. "Your tests are inconclusive, Mr. Kane," said one doctor, his voice respectful but troubled. "We'll run further diagnostics," added another, tapping furiously on a screen. Victor lay silent, staring at the ceiling. He had signed billion-dollar deals with less hesitation than these doctors now showed in deciphering his condition. Fear gnawed at him, but pride stitched his lips shut. He told himself he was still in control. Yet every cough, every spasm in his chest betrayed the lie. At the edge of the room, unseen by all but the walls, someone moved with quiet rhythm. A mop swayed across the gleaming tiles, water swishing softly in its bucket. She was dressed in plain navy scrubs, her hands roughened by years of bleach and detergent. Her name tag read Amara, but no one read it. Amara had cleaned these halls for 7 years, her presence as constant as the smell of antiseptic. She had seen the wealthy come and go, watched families wail in joy or collapse in grief. She knew the rhythm of suffering the way others knew the rhythm of music. Now, as she wiped the floor beneath the machines, she glanced up, just once, and noticed the billionaire's labored breathing. Not just the struggle itself, but something offbeat, something that didn't match the medical chatter circling his bed. But she lowered her eyes again. Cleaners didn't speak. Not in rooms filled with 20 doctors. Victor tried to sit up later that evening, waving away a nurse's hand. "I'm fine," he muttered, even as sweat beaded his brow. He hated the pity in their eyes. But when he was alone, when the door clicked shut and the machines hummed, his mask cracked. His chest heaved, shallow gasps echoing in the silence. He clutched the sheet with trembling fingers. For the first time in decades, he whispered into the empty air. "Am I going to die?" His question dissolved into the quiet. Only the cleaner heard it, pausing mid-swipe in the hallway. Her heart clenched at the sound. She had heard that tone before, not from titans of industry, but from men and women who had run out of time. The next morning brought no relief. Doctors shuffled in and out, ordering scans, prescribing new medications, debating among themselves. Yet Victor grew weaker. His skin lost its color, his lips cracked, his strength bled away like water through cupped hands. Still no diagnosis. One specialist confessed to another, their hushed voices carrying a note of panic. Victor closed his eyes, pretending to sleep, but he heard every word. For all his billions, for all the brilliance gathered at his bedside, he was slipping further into shadows. And in the corner, Amara wrung her mop dry, her brow furrowed. She had seen something no one else had noticed. But for now, she stayed silent. Because who would listen to a cleaner when 20 doctors could not see? The following days blurred into a storm of white coats and frantic jargon. Machines beeped, printers spat out charts, and doctors argued in clipped voices while Victor Kane lay fading beneath layers of wires and tubes. "His labs are conflicting," muttered one cardiologist, flipping through digital scans. "Could be viral myocarditis," suggested another. "Or a rare autoimmune response," countered a third. But the truth was simpler and harsher. None of them knew what was killing him. Victor's body weakened with each sunrise. The titan of steel and glass, who once spoke with the certainty of kings, now struggled to lift a cup of water. His pride forced him to keep silent, but his eyes betrayed the terror he fought to bury. Word spread beyond the hospital walls. Shareholders grew restless, journalists speculated, and Kane Global stock wavered with rumors of its leader's demise. But inside the private ward, the panic was far more personal. His sister wept quietly in the corner, clutching rosary beads. His son, barely 30 and not yet hardened by the world of business, slammed his fist on the table. "You're the best doctors in the country," he shouted. "Why can't you fix him?" No one answered. Their silence was louder than any machine alarm. Victor, pale and sweating, opened his mouth to calm his son, but only a rasp escaped. Even his voice, once sharp as iron, had deserted him. While chaos swirled, Amara moved quietly along the room's edges. She sprayed down handles, polished corners, mopped streaks the doctors never noticed. Her hands worked automatically, but her eyes, those eyes missed nothing. She had been there when Victor's breathing stuttered unevenly, not like failing lungs, but like something obstructing his air in sudden intervals. She noticed how he clenched his jaw after sipping water, as if swallowing brought pain no one else registered. A faint wheeze escaped him, one that grew sharper when the air conditioning hummed directly above. Her gaze drifted upward, to the vent where a faint dust shadow lined the edges. Amara paused, her mop midair. It didn't make sense, not medically, not to anyone with years of training. But something about it nagged her. Still, she lowered her head and continued cleaning. She was just the cleaner. That night, as storm clouds pressed against the hospital windows, Victor's body betrayed him again. One moment he was whispering to his son, the next his back arched violently, monitors screaming as his heart rate plunged. "Crash cart. Now," shouted a doctor. "Nurse, AP-stat." The room erupted. Gloves snapped, syringes pierced, paddles were pressed against his chest. His body jolted once, twice, but the monitors dipped again, the line flattening. Amara froze in the corner, mop still in hand, her heart thundering louder than the alarms. The doctors shouted over one another, a chorus of desperation. Victor's family screamed his name, helpless. And then she saw it again. That strange tightening in his throat, the way his lips strained not as though his heart alone was failing, but as though something deeper, simpler, had been overlooked. Her chest burned with the weight of silence. If she stayed quiet, he would die. If she spoke, they would laugh, dismiss her, maybe even fire her. But a voice inside her whispered, "If you see something that could save a life and you stay silent, what does that make you?" Her mop clattered to the floor. "Wait!" The room froze for a split second. Heads turned. Doctors scowled. The billionaire's son blinked in confusion. Her throat tightened, but she forced the words out. "You're missing something. Look at his throat. He's choking, not just failing. Something's blocking him." The room erupted with disbelief. "You're out of line," snapped one doctor. "This is a sterile procedure," barked another. But Victor's body convulsed again, the line flattening further, the air around him thick with death. Amara's voice cut through the chaos, trembling but strong. "You're treating the wrong problem. If you don't listen, he'll die." The doctors hesitated, torn between pride and desperation. The billionaire's son looked from his father to the woman with the mop, panic cracking his voice. "Do what she says," he cried. And then, Victor himself, chest heaving, eyes fluttering, rasped out the words that would shatter the hierarchy of that room. "Stop, listen to her, or you'll kill me." The room went still. 20 doctors frozen, a cleaner trembling, and a billionaire clinging to life with his last breath, choosing to place it in the hands of the one person no one else even. For a heartbeat, the room turned to stone. The beeping of machines filled the silence, sharp and relentless, echoing the truth none of them wanted to face. The billionaire had just placed his fate in the hands of a woman with a mop. The lead cardiologist stiffened, jaw tight. "Sir, you're delirious. She's not qualified to." "Enough," rasped Victor, his eyes burning even as his body trembled. She saw something. Hear her. The command of a CEO, the weight of decades of authority, still carried power even as he hovered between life and death. Yet defiance lingered in the doctor's eyes, a battlefield of pride and desperation. Amara's hands shook, but her voice didn't falter. "Look at his throat. He isn't just failing, he's fighting something stuck. Every time he swallows, he winces. Every time that vent kicks on, his breathing worsens. You've been searching in the wrong place." "Impossible," snapped one physician. "His scans don't show." "Scans don't show everything," Amara interrupted, surprising even herself. The billionaire's son leaned forward, his voice raw with fear. "She noticed something you didn't. What if she's right?" Another doctor muttered, "This is absurd." Yet his hand trembled as he adjusted the monitor, unwilling to admit doubt. Amara stood straighter. For years she had been invisible, dismissed, waved aside like the dirt she cleaned. But now, when life balanced on a knife's edge, her words cut deeper than any degree. The room split in silence. 20 doctors, armed with decades of knowledge, hesitated to bow to a woman society had trained them not to see. Pride whispered in their ears, "If she's right, what does that make you?" Victor's chest heaved, the monitor dipping again. His voice was a rasping ghost, but it carried steel. "Do as she says." That's an order. The command broke through the wall of hesitation. The lead physician gestured sharply. "Fine. Check his airway." A nurse rushed forward, shining a light down Victor's throat. The seconds dragged. Everyone held their breath. Then a sharp intake. There's swelling. Restriction. Murmurs erupted. The cleaner had been right. But hesitation lingered. No one wanted to admit it aloud. Amara's heart thundered. She had spoken, been heard, but now came the hardest part. Would they act? She wanted to shrink back, to disappear before the storm of dismissal returned. Yet her gaze landed on Victor, his lips blue, his fingers clawing at the sheet as if holding onto life itself. She took a step forward. "If you waste another minute arguing, he won't make it." Her words sliced the room in two. Silence followed, heavy and undeniable. The billionaire's sister clasped her beads tighter. His son's eyes filled with tears. The doctors exchanged uneasy glances. And for the first time in 7 years of scrubbing these halls, Amara refused to be invisible. The truth was heavier than the machines that hummed around them. If Amara were one of them, a doctor in a white coat with letters trailing her name. Her words would have been gospel. But because she was a black cleaner, they were poison, daring, a challenge to the very hierarchy of the room. Still, the undeniable lay before them. She had noticed what they had not. Victor's son broke the silence. Do it. Follow her lead. The lead cardiologist bristled, but he could no longer argue. Pride battled with survival, and survival finally won. Doctors scrambled, preparing new instruments. Nurses adjusted monitors, oxygen lines. The hum of urgency filled the air. But Amara stood still, every nerve alive. Doubt gnawed at her edges. What if she was wrong? What if this moment, this defiance, ended not in saving a life but proving her a fool? She clenched her fists, whispering to herself. No, you've seen this before. You know what you saw. Because she had. Years ago, when her younger brother collapsed in a small village clinic where doctors never came, she had seen the same strained swallowing, the same desperate clutch at the throat. No one had listened then, and by the time they realized, it was too late. She would not let history repeat itself. Victor's eyes fluttered open, finding Amara in the chaos. For a moment, the titan of steel and glass looked not at a cleaner, but at the only person willing to stand firm when the world wavered. You, he whispered, voice hoarse, don't let them stop. And with that, he surrendered the last of his pride, placing his empire, his legacy, his very breath in the hands of someone the world overlooked. Pause for a moment. Imagine being in that room. 20 experts on one side and one overlooked voice on the other. Who would you have believed? The doctors with all their titles, or the cleaner who dared to speak? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Monitors screamed again, louder, sharper, the flatline creeping closer. The doctor's hands flew, tools clattering, voices shouting orders. The air was thick with panic and sweat. But over it all came the echo of Amara's words. He's choking, not just failing. The lead doctor gritted his teeth, prepared to clear his airway. Now, and as the instruments slid into place, as the battle for life reached its breaking point, the world held its breath, waiting to see if the words of a cleaner could rewrite the fate of a billionaire. The machines screamed again, this time sharper, more urgent. The billionaire's chest heaved once, then stilled. A thin, unbroken tone filled the room, the sound no one wanted to hear. Flatline, someone shouted. The doctors rushed into action, hands flying across the billionaire's body, adrenaline plunging into his veins, paddles pressed to his chest. His body jolted once, then again, but the line barely flickered. Panic crackled in the air. This was it. The empire, the name, the man, all slipping away before their eyes. Amara's voice cut through the storm. You're wasting time. Clear his airway. The lead doctor snapped. Out of the way. But then Victor's eyes opened for a flicker of a second, wide with desperation, and he rasped with what breath remained. Listen to her. It was not a request. It was an order. His final command. The cardiologist hesitated, then slammed his hand on the table. Suction. Now. A nurse grabbed the instrument, sliding it into place, while another adjusted the light. The seconds dragged like hours. Amara clutched her fists, whispering a silent prayer, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might stop too. Then it happened. A faint obstruction dislodged, a hidden swelling eased as the airway cleared. A choked gasp tore from Victor's lips, raw and desperate, but it was breath. Real breath. The monitor flickered, once, twice, before the jagged line of life returned. The flat line gave way to a steady rhythm, faint at first, then stronger, stronger still. Gasps filled the room. Nurses froze. Doctors stared at the screen as though they couldn't believe what they were seeing. Victor Kane, the billionaire CEO everyone thought was slipping into death, was alive. The lead doctor's hands trembled as he stepped back. His face, once carved in pride, now sagged in disbelief. She was right. The billionaire's son stumbled forward, tears streaking his cheeks. He gripped his father's hand, whispering, "Dad, you're here, you're still here." Victor's eyes fluttered open, heavy but aware. His gaze scanned the room, bypassing the doctors, the nurses, the machines, and finding only her. Amara, still clutching her mop, eyes wet with unshed tears, stood frozen. For a long, fragile moment, the world went silent. The storm outside rattled the windows, the machines hummed, but inside that room, nothing mattered except the impossible truth. A cleaner had saved a billionaire. Victor's lips curved into the faintest smile, a ghost of the powerful man he once was. His voice, weak but unshakable, whispered, "You saw me when no one else did." A nurse lowered her head, ashamed. One of the younger doctors whispered, "We should have listened sooner." The weight of humility hung thick in the air. Victor squeezed Amara's gaze tighter, as though words were not enough. Gratitude spilled out, not through speeches, but through the simple act of acknowledgement, the kind that said, "I owe you my life." If you were standing in that room, watching 20 doctors humbled by a cleaner's courage, what would you have felt? Relief, shock, or maybe respect for the one no one noticed until it was almost too late? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The room exhaled as one, a single breath of relief that carried more weight than any announcement ever could. The empire would not crumble that night. A life had been pulled back from the edge, not by wealth, not by status, not by degrees, but by the courage of someone who refused to remain unseen. And for the first time in his life, Victor Kane, the man who once believed power came only from the top, bowed his head in gratitude to someone who worked in the shadows. But what neither of them knew was how deeply this moment would change everything that came after. The days that followed unfolded like the slow lifting of a storm. The billionaire's condition stabilized, his breathing no longer ragged, his heartbeat no longer a fragile flicker on the monitor. 20 doctors still came and went, but the air in the room had shifted. They were quieter now, humbler, their glances no longer filled with arrogance, but with a silent reminder of what they had overlooked. Victor Kane, the man who had once ruled boardrooms with iron certainty, now lay in his hospital bed studying the ceiling as though it were the first time he had ever seen it. His empire still stood, but something deeper had cracked inside him. The illusion that power and money made him untouchable. And in that fragile space of humility, one name echoed louder than the rest, Amara. He asked for her the very next morning. Nurses looked puzzled, some even hesitant. "The cleaner, sir?" one repeated, as if the words themselves felt strange. "Yes," Victor rasped, his eyes sharp though his body was weak. "Bring her to me." Amara came with her mop still in hand, her uniform smelling faintly of bleach. She looked nervous, unsure if she had overstepped by speaking out that night. But Victor smiled, a true smile that softened the lines of power etched on his face. "You didn't just save my life," he said softly. "You gave me back my soul." Tears welled in her eyes. "I only saw what others missed," she whispered. "And that," Victor replied, gripping her hand with surprising strength, "is everything." News spread quickly. A billionaire saved not by his wealth, not by 20 of the world's best doctors, but by the unnoticed cleaner in the corner of the room. Journalists wanted the story. Headlines clamored for the truth. And for the first time, Amara's name was spoken not with dismissal, but with respect. 1 week later, as Victor walked, slowly but alive, into a press conference, Amara stood beside him, no longer in her uniform, but in a simple dress he had bought for her. Cameras flashed, voices shouted, but when Victor took the microphone, his first words silenced the room. "I stand before you today not because of my wealth, not because of medicine, but because someone the world ignored refused to stay silent. Amara saw me when others did not, and because of her, I am alive." The applause was thunderous, but louder still was the shift that rippled through every face watching. In that moment, the invisible became visible. Amara's life transformed. She was offered education, opportunities, and respect she had never dared dream of. But more than that, she carried something deeper. The knowledge that courage and humanity, even from the unseen corners of the world, could change destinies. Victor, too, changed. He returned to his empire not with the same unyielding grip, but with softer hands, wiser eyes. He built new initiatives for workers, funded programs for overlooked voices, and every time he signed a deal, he remembered the mop that had stood beside his deathbed. Together, their bond remained. Not of billionaire and cleaner, but of two souls connected by a moment where everything almost ended, and yet began anew. Let me ask you this. Do you believe that sometimes it's the voices we ignore that hold the power to save us? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your reflections. And as the sun set outside the glass towers of the city, Victor looked out at the skyline he once thought he owned. Now he realized he owned nothing. He was simply part of something greater. And beside him, Amara smiled quietly, knowing she had not only saved a life, but awakened a heart. The story ended not with wealth, not with status, but with gratitude, the kind that lives forever between two unlikely people who discovered that true power is not in being seen, but in choosing to see others.
Thank you for watching all the way to the end. If this story moved you, the next one will hit even deeper. It's more gripping, more unexpected, and waiting for you right now. Don't hesitate. Click the video on your screen, and I'll see you in the next story.